Welcome to the final part of your Transcendence training. We're finally here. And I hope you'll agree that the modules have become less heavy, the more we've understood, the more we've learned. Things hopefully are starting to slot into place, and I really hope, this is my biggest intention for this course, is that you're now able to take what you've learned, not as guru status, I know it all, teacher, I can fix all your problems, teacher. We intend, and my intention for you guys is that by this point in the course, you are ready to go out there and say, do you know what? I get it. I'm going through it, if that's the case for you. And I'm walking alongside you. I'm sharing the understanding that I know so that we can make this journey a little easier. I have no judgment, no criticism of myself or my body for this journey that it's on. And I really want people as instructors to go out there and be able to pass on this info so that the women, or those people that identify as women, those people that are struggling with the perimenopause, that they understand it's not their fault. I'm going to talk more about that on this session. So settle down. This one's a lot less heavy. It's a broader overview rather than getting really in depth into the specifics, but it's perhaps the most important part of the course when you look at it from that perspective of the biggest gift that we're giving people is this. We can drop that sense of guilt and shame and criticism and almost disgust around what's happening to our bodies, what's happening to our minds, and the way that we're showing up in the world during this transitional period. Ultimately, we are the whole course is called the Transcendence. The reason why it's called the Transcendence is we want people to be able to be at one with and then rise above these struggles to this place where we can be in full acceptance of who we are and where we're at on our journey through life. So the fourth class that you will teach as part of the Transcendence course is essentially a share session. So it would be around getting all of your clients to practice the tools and techniques that they've been practicing for the last 3 weeks, but also as part of that session, sitting down and sharing their biggest takeaways, sharing their lows, sharing what's going on for them. And the reason why we do that is because in that safe space that we're going to create, and we'll talk more about how to do that in a moment, but in that space of people with similar experiences, their peers, when we allow this exchange, and we're talking about this exchange on an energetic level, just putting themselves in that room with other women with the same intention, and through the work of the tools and through the process that we travel through the breath work and the movement and the heart coherence and all that kind of stuff, it creates this energetic safety where people can show up and just be themselves. And we know that when we find somebody else that has the same experience as us, it creates a sense of togetherness, of connection, of support, just automatically. And that therefore creates safety in the nervous system. Remember that our bodies are just craving and looking for connection as one of our human needs. And the reason why that's so important is that that connection on a deep primal level provides us with a sense of safety. When we have safety in the nervous system, we can travel backwards and forwards, so we can go into that fight or flight. If we need to get angry, we need to protect ourselves, need to defend ourselves, that's normal human emotion. We can move into fight or flight. We can also move into freeze as a protective mechanism for those moments where actually I do need to withdraw from society, I do need to rest, I do need to sort of recoil and reflect and hibernate almost to gather my strength. But what the safety aspect does, it allows us to then be able to move back from that point more easily, back into the ventral vagal state. And we know from ventral vagal state that everything works in the body much more efficiently, so that all of our symptoms, our perimenopausal symptoms, are going to be much lessened when we're in ventral vagal state. And the research tells us that shared peer experience and peer coaching, peer support is really, really valuable. And that's not to say that we are rejecting any other kind of treatment. It's just that on top of whatever treatment and whatever support that your client and those women that are accessing the course choose to embark upon, the peer support system is almost as valuable as that. And the research tells us, and there's not much research in terms of working with perimenopausal women in exclusivity, but there is a lot of research around how it affects mental health. And I suppose my expectation is that as the research comes through, is that given that when we're in perimenopause, it really deeply affects our brain, our minds, and our mental health, surely if there are benefits shown for those people that have severe psychiatric disorders, as explained in this research here on the screen, if it helps them, surely it can help these people. So what I really wanted to make very clear, though, is that this is not a replacement for mental health therapy, for psychiatric care or anything like that. It's for us to provide a really safe space, and this is here to help us to understand that if it can work with people that really do need and are having mental health treatment, it can definitely help our women that come and sit in these circles and sit in exhale transcendence sessions with us. So they, in the research, have defined peer support as a system of giving and receiving help founded on key principles of respect, shared responsibility, and mutual agreement of what is helpful. So in terms of our spaces and the spaces that we want to create for our sessions, those energetic spaces, it's about making sure that those that attend your session are respectful of one another. No one's talking over each other, particularly in this last session where it could get crowded. People could get drowned out. Quiet people might not feel as comfortable. It's our job to facilitate that, and it's our job to make sure that everyone holds similar values. And hopefully, through the process of marketing, what you'll find is that you attract clients who do hold the same values as you and as us as an identity and as a brand. Because if they didn't, they probably wouldn't be as attracted to what we do. So you don't need to worry about it too much, but just remember that for this peer sharing to be effective, there needs to be a central point really where someone is not necessarily engaging or directing or controlling the conversation, but somebody is observing it just to ensure that everyone feels valued, everyone feels seen, everyone feels heard. So through this process of offering this support, the companionship, the empathy, the sharing, and the assistance, which will happen over this period of 4 weeks when they're all together. I mean, this fourth session is predominantly and primarily actually all around this peer sharing and this opportunity to talk really and to be seen and to be heard. And within that, over this period of 4 weeks and in this session, your job is to promote this feeling of companionship, of empathy. I'm going to go into empathy in more depth in a moment, of sharing and of assistance, but not from a guru to teacher point of view. This is peer-to-peer. This is what worked for me point of view. And what they say is when that happens is that feelings of loneliness, feelings of rejection, feelings of discrimination and frustration, which it says here are frequently encountered by persons who have a severe psychiatric disorder, This is true of people that are going through the perimenopause. It can be really isolating. You can feel really rejected by society because of the way that we look, the way that we smell, even the way that we think, the way that we behave. You know, all of this stuff can make us feel really separate from, not only from the ideals of how I'm supposed to show up as a woman in this world, but also just from society in general. Like, it can really feel like, because no one talks about this stuff, it can really feel like you're absolutely on your own going through it, and you almost go through this period of rejecting yourself as well, because you resist it. We don't want to go through this transition. We don't want to accept that we're at that stage of life, and we just focus on the negative, all the stuff we spoke about in earlier sessions. We have this rejection of the self, which is really hurtful and really painful. And also, I suppose, on some level, you could say there's discrimination. But the biggest feelings are around this feeling of loneliness, rejection, frustration. Like, you just don't want to go through this stuff. Nothing seems to be working, and you kind of feel trapped in this existence. You don't know how long it's going to go on for. Initially, when you start to research like perimenopause, which a lot of women that have come to your classes will have been doing, it's this realization of, oh crap, this is what's happening to me, and it could last 10 years. You know, it's really frustrating. No one seems to have the full answers, you know, when you scratch the surface. It's getting better, but it's not ideal. So what we're aiming to do with these sessions, on top of all the other stuff, is combat this feeling of loneliness, rejection, and frustration. So what the rest of the research shows us is that when we come together and experience peer support as a participant, we tend to feel the following benefits. So we feel empowered because it's an action that we've taken ourselves, and it's rather than somebody fixing us, someone throwing a load of medication at us, for example. It's encouraging us to find the answers that are within ourselves. It's helping us learn to walk in this new identity. It's helping us to fall in love with ourselves again. Rather than being told what to do, we're being gifted tools, particularly in this transcendence setting. And the women that come to these 4 sessions are embodying tools. They're not just hearing about it, or they're not just going to the GP and being told, oh, you could try to meditate. They're actually experiencing it. They are being taught, yes, but when we are teaching them, we are not making them dependent on us. So they're not now dependent on an app, they're not dependent on a podcast, they're not dependent on coming to our class every single day and sitting with us. Hopefully they have learned tools and techniques that they can just take out. They don't need to sit for an hour every day. They can just take the breath work, the movement, whatever feels good for them. So it's an empowering experience rather than creating the dependence on an external source. We're allowing them to find the strength within. We're providing the tools and the power and the understanding and the knowledge so that they can go away and have this sense of, I'm doing it for myself, which is healing in itself, right? And below that, you say the peer support research shows that attending these type of sessions provides a source of hope and optimism. And we know, in terms of healing the nervous system, that if we are locked in a state of freeze or fight or flight, freeze is worse. When we're in freeze, it's like literally there is no hope left. Like, I'm just going to cocoon in this ball and just like lie here for the next 10 years of my life because I don't want to go through all these changes, and there's no help. There's no options. You know, when we're in fight or flight, we're like fighting for the answer. We're clinging on to medicines. We're clinging on to whatever the latest social media person is telling us about perimenopause. Like, we're kind of, but we're still gripping on. What we want to do is move through into that okay state, that ventral vagal state, which would mean I'm okay with where I'm at. I understand this is a process I'm going through. The more I resist it, the worse it's going to be, all that stuff. And just being in that place of, do you know what, I'm okay with it. It is what it is. But what the peer support does, and walking alongside other people and finding this companionship and this friendship and this sense of, I'm not on my own. and other people are a little bit further along, and they're getting through it, and they're still surviving, and they're still living an amazing life, and it's exciting. All that kind of stuff takes us into this place of hope, which is so healing and soothing to the nervous system. It takes us into that divine portal, which I talk a lot in my other courses. You know, it's this sense of connectedness to spirit, to purpose, to source. The universe is working alongside me. This is a gift for me to work with it, you know, and it's a journey. But the peer support, the research shows that it brings us that sense of hope. We know that that sense of hope is essential in terms of healing. If you look at people that are very poorly, it's a lot of their, you know, sense of how am I going to get through this? A lot of that influences the initial or the final outcome, if you like. Okay, so it's not going to fix everything. It's not going to take away this horrific illness if you've got it, but it helps. And the reason why it helps is because it keeps you in that ventral vagal state, or in this state of divine connection. It keeps you in touch with your divinity. Okay. So I've mentioned I mentioned the isolation, I mentioned the friendship. It also, in terms of this space where everyone gets a turn, everybody can talk about what they're going through. It's so powerful, and again, so empowering to have the opportunity to speak. Most of us go through these symptoms and go through perimenopause without telling anyone really, like, the depth of what they're going through, without telling anyone about the weird and wonderful symptoms. You know, they might post in a group, but they'll post anonymously, and all that just underpins this, or further takes us into the depths of shame, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So when we are able to find our voice, when we're able to confidently, or maybe not even confidently, but the confidence might come after we've shared, because we've shared, and then we're still accepted, we're still part of the group, we're still loved, we're still supported, and all those other things. So finding a voice and is really powerful in terms of, again, regulating the nervous system, because if I can find a safe enough place to speak and share my truth, which requires this sense of courage and this sense of coming up against potential judgment, which the nervous system does not like, because the nervous system is going to take us right back into fight or flight when we're going in, or maybe even into freeze mode when the mic, so to speak, the energetic mic comes to us, and we're sat in circle, and it's you're up next. All of these, the fight or flight and the freeze mode, can be activated subconsciously, you know, because of stuff that's happened to us in the past, when we've maybe shared something that's embarrassing, or something that we deemed as making us different from the rest. You know, we are designed to fit in, we're designed to be part of the crew. So when it comes to us, if that person then has learned enough on the course of the other 3 sessions, learned enough about the breath, learned enough about the body, and how we can use that to help regulate the nervous system, and then they're then able to speak. Imagine the power of that moment when they're just like, do you know what, I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. And even if that person is struggling with regulation in that moment, our job as an instructor is to create that safe space energetically, to maybe go into heart coherence, to maybe allow our energetic field, which is sending information of a sense of safety out to everyone that's in that class. If we can just hold that intention on that specific person for a moment, to hold them through that process of speaking up, imagine how powerful that could be. And connected to that, we then grow from that point as this increased confidence and self-esteem, because I know I'm not alone. I know I can do it. I know I can use these tools. I know that I'm going to be okay. And even if it's hard, I've got other people around me that are going through the same thing. That's going to make it okay for me as well. So all of these things layer on top of each other. You know, people think they're coming to class, but you know, to learn about the perimenopause, but they're coming to class and leaving with increased confidence and self-esteem off the back of the tools that they're going to use in everyday life, that are going to have no choice. If they do the work, It's going to have there's nothing else can occur other than eventually we get this increased confidence and self-esteem, because self-esteem comes from liking ourselves, right? It comes from knowing ourselves. Both of those things are happening when we meditate. Both of those things are happening when we're on the Transcendence course, because we're learning to accept our bodies, we're learning to accept the changes, we're learning to accept ourselves as women, and that self-esteem is based upon that feeling of, do you know what? I have this light inside me, and my worth and my light is not negotiated by any external factor or thing. That's who I am. And I am going to hold it in this container, and I like it. I like who I am. I like what I stand for. And remember that when we're meditating, when we're using mindfulness, it's helping us to develop or more easily access this self-compassion. I mean, I could go on for hours about this. It's helping us develop the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex is where we house our sense of self. So the more we know ourselves, the more that we're able to understand ourselves, the more we're able to accept ourselves, therefore we're more able to love ourselves. But it's about us going first, and we'll talk about that in more depth in a moment. But just you showing up as you with all your imperfections gives other people to do the same thing. It gives them permission to do exactly the same in their world. Like, I'm not a guru, I'm just normal. I still struggle with this, I still struggle with that, but I feel great when I do this. We're just normal people going through normal lives, and it's giving other people this escape from society, which tells us to do more, to work harder, to be better. We're never enough. It's so powerful. I literally could go on about this for hours. So I want you to think about this end result of empowerment, finding a voice, having hope, having confidence, having self-esteem. That's your job as a facilitator, yes, to hold that vision for people. You cannot do it for them, though. This is really important. Don't become the mother, so to speak. We have a tendency to place our own self-worth based on the outcomes of our clients. Please do not do that. They have free will, they have choice, they are grown adults. Your job is to give the information, their job is to go out there and practice it. They have to show up to the mat. They have to implement this stuff. They have to go on this journey. Our job is simply to remind them that it's possible, to be that example of this is possible. That's why your own practice matters. You can go on this journey with them, to be fair. I'm not saying wait until 10 years and you're out of the perimenopause. No, go on that journey with them. But each time you teach it, if you really fully embody those practices, you're going to get better at holding that vision and of being that source of inspiration for people, being that place of hope, because you've done it. So each time you go through a cycle of teaching the transcendence, if you'll learn more, you'll be more, you'll be better, you'll be more inspiring, and you don't even have to do anything to do that. It's just on an energetic level, you will be changed. Okay, but it's their job to do their own energetic leveling up, if you like. We just walk alongside them. Here are the tools. I'm going to hold you accountable if you want to, but that's not going to impact my self-worth. If you don't decide to do it or nothing changes, that's on you. Okay, but we know the research is there. If they come to class, they do the work, they show up, and they commit to being authentically themselves, which the classes allow. The process of the breath work and the meditation and all of that stuff helps you feel more comfortable being exactly who you are. So they're going to show up more authentically. If they do all of that, they just need to turn up, basically. And we're on that journey. So benefits from the collective. So those are benefits in terms of each individual participant may or should come out feeling those kind of empowered, confident, boosted self-esteem, all those things we've already spoke about. But in terms of the group themselves, they'll experience a shared identity and shared experience, which again, we know because we long for connection. It's a basic primal human need. Give someone connection, and we're working back towards that sense of being in that ventral vagal. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to operate better. I'm going to be more healthy. I'm going to be more productive, just because I have now this sense of connection and sense of belonging. Belonging is so powerful, because that's all we're searching for, and we negotiate it everywhere we go. We spend so much time trying to fit in. We dull down our personalities. We particularly as healers, we probably don't tell everyone that we meet what we do and what we're into. And I really struggle with this sense of being different to everyone else, and I have always been. You might have heard this story before if you've been with Excel for any length of time, but because I'm so tall, for a start, I was a model when I was younger as well, so I really stood out, and I did not like it at all. I did not like it at all. And also on top of that, I was also a bit weird. I'm definitely ADHD, potentially autistic as well, but I also liked things that no one else did. I was really into boy bands. I was really into horse riding. I was just different to everyone else. And it really unsettled me. And I really still to this day struggle with it, which is why I absolutely adore what we've created, because we created this safe space with Exhale that's kind of open arms to everyone that doesn't quite fit in. Everyone that's felt that kind of sense of weirdness, it gives us a sense of belonging. And every time I tap into that community, every time I show up for a live, every time I do a training, every time I do a class, it boosts my health energetically, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And that's what these classes can do for people. It's this sense of, this is where I fit in. I've been struggling with this thing. These other women struggle with this thing as well. They are like me. They're in here because they like meditation, or at least they're open to it. They're open to holistic stuff. They're all going to be unique and have different quirks and different ways of doing things, but ultimately our values and our principles are probably going to be the same, which creates this gorgeous sense of belonging. You're safe here. Within that, sometimes what can emerge as well is that we've got feel stronger together. We have this feeling like we want to go out and tell people, we want to share this stuff, we want to challenge the status quo, which is great for you as instructors, because they will go out and share this message. They'll tell their friends, what I did this course and it was amazing. You need to come and meet whoever it is that's teaching the course. She's going to help you out. And that sense of, like, again, it's that empowerment, like we can do something, we can change. And also, again, same thing, like getting new knowledge out there, questioning things as they come to you, moving forwards, they'll never be the same. That this level of understanding usually opens doors to more inquiry, to more self-awareness, to more learning, to more healing. So they'll be questioning things all the time, which is a really good place to be. But there are some downsides. So what our job as facilitators of this peer support, our job is to make sure that everybody feels safe in that group. And all the participants, like I say, are going to be so unique and so diverse that there's no guarantee that they all hold the same values. Like I say, 99.9% of them are going to. If your marketing is authentic, if you are sharing this stuff, 9 times out of 10, they're going to have the same sort of values. But just because somebody has a spiritual practice doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good person either. And I don't really believe in like good or bad people, but what I do believe in, that there are sometimes in the spiritual space people that are really deeply wounded, really deeply hurting, and as a result of that, hurt people. So what I want you just to be aware of in the periphery, hold good intention, put out the marketing that's heart focused, soul led, talk to people about it, hold that intention of beautiful light souls coming into your arena. But you have to have that in the back of your mind, that there might be someone there that doesn't necessarily share the same values. And it's your job to make sure that if that's the case, it's okay, but it's not impacting anyone else's experience. And again, just because you've been through similar life experiences doesn't necessarily mean you'll always click with them, but peer support only really works when you build a relationship with somebody. So I think building time into your classes for people to talk afterwards, or maybe before, like share a drink afterwards, like a brew, like a herbal tea, or I don't know, I used to do hot Vimto and things like that. Whatever you fancy might be nice, to allow people to establish these relationships so that they can feel like they have an opportunity to click with other people. And again, just be wary of people feeling that they've been pushed to join the Transcendence. So making sure that the people that join really want to be there, because if they don't and they've been pushed by, I don't know, a family member, or I mean, I'm hoping that maybe one day GPs will be referring and recommending this kind of thing. But if they don't want to be there, we can't establish that level of good intention and shared experience and shared desired outcomes, because this person didn't want to be there in the first place. So just be really careful of that. Just making sure also that you're really clear that choice is crucial. So some people will be on HRT during the Transcendence, some people will not be. What's really important to remember is that this is not a replacement for HRT. This is supplemental. Some people might not need to go on HRT as a result of the course, but that's not the aim of the course. The aim of the course, the aim of the Transcendence, is not to get rid of HRT. It is there, it's available. If you feel like you want it and you need it, then absolutely bloody go and take it. There is no point in struggling. And actually, the more that we struggle, the less likely we are to be able to get into these ventral vagal states and hormonal balance and all that kind of stuff. So it's really important that actually that, you know, some people might do it as, actually, I'm going to take the HRT till I feel better. And then they might feel better and come off it. Some people just stay on it forever. If it works, don't fix it. This is just a deeper level of understanding and supplemental to the rest of the treatments that are out there. But what you might find is that some people come to the class with very fixed outcomes or very fixed beliefs on, you know, we shouldn't take HRT or we should take HRT. And it's your job as the facilitator to monitor those conversations and not allow that to come across. This is something that I really experienced in terms of my antenatal classes, and we'd have people that were very natural home birth pros, pro that, and then other people that were really favoring a medicated birth and, you know, and hospitalized, more traditional kind of birth. And what we'd find is there'd be this kind of like sense of marginalization and sense of hierarchy. And when you know, we'd come back to people after they had their babies and they'd really feel like they'd failed if they had used pain relief, for example. So our job as facilitators was just to remind people that your path is your path, and that these are tools that are going to make whatever path you end up on easier. You don't know how things are going to turn in the next week, the next month, the next year. You don't want to turn your back on things that might support you. Equally, it is not a failure to access medication. It's not a failure to need therapy or counseling or whatever it is. This is about your journey being your journey and you discovering what works for you. This is just an additional supplemental way of looking at things. So it's really important that you don't allow anybody to make anyone else feel less than because of their choices. And I think the best way to do that is you set the tone. Every lesson you remind them, every session you remind them, this is not about, there is no hierarchy, there's no right or wrong. This is your journey, is your journey. This is supplemental. Some of you will need less external intervention than others, and so on and so forth. But this is about whatever works for you and your body, and also really like highlighting that, you know, some of the things that we've gone through in the past might make this journey more difficult. That's not our fault. It's the path again that was gifted to us. It does not make you wrong, does not make your body broken. It does not need fixing. It just needs differing levels of support. So hopefully that feels like you can get that across. If anyone struggles with that, please do get in touch and let me know and I'll help you. Other thing also is that obviously people that are coming to these type of classes are probably feeling quite emotional, quite like they've got quite a lot on their plate. For some people, this kind of sense of like this last session might be really overwhelming in terms of other people sharing, and it's just about modeling really that we can listen to other people. We can listen to their stories, we can listen to their troubles, we can listen to their heartbreaks, but we're not making them our own. We're not coming in there trying to fix. And I think this is so true, particularly of women. We want to fix things, we want to help things, we want to mother people. But actually what we have to do is empower them instead. So it's about, you know, if somebody's kind of expressing that they, or you suspect they might feel really overwhelmed, by listening to everybody and not being able to help, or trying to help everybody, trying to be in with everybody, and sort of offering loads of advice and support, and offering maybe unobtainable or unrealistic levels of support, just reminding them by talking about it, not singling that person out, but just talking about how, you know, when we're sharing this information with other people and this advice and this guidance, that we're not directing their journey, we're not controlling their journey, we're not taking on this mothering role, we're just giving them free will. All we can be is the lighthouse. Remember that analogy. It's just about us doing what's right for us, and in that process our light will shine brighter, it will reach more people, and also it's just encouraging other people to find what works for them. You're not dragging, the lighthouse doesn't run into the sea to pull all the ships in. It just stands there saying, this is the way that you can choose. Yeah, I will walk alongside you, I'll support you, I'll help you, but you've got to do it yourself. Okay? I'm not coming into the sea to rescue you. No, no, no. You've got to do the work yourself. And you've got to be not looking for this external validation, which is a lot when you see clients trying to overhelp other clients. It's about them wanting to get this external validation from, by helping someone, it boosts my self-worth. What we want to do is allow people to just be like, you know what, you're enough on your own, even if you never did a thing again, or you had never done a thing ever. You're still enough, you're still perfect, you're still whole, you're still worthy. Okay, so I really wanted to play this video from Brené Brown because I think it really highlights just how powerful our sessions of the Transcendence can be, and how powerful this fourth session, where you might feel like, you know what, I'm not actually giving, there's not even a PowerPoint for this. There's not even a PowerPoint for the fourth session because you don't need one. But because it's just literally share, then do the class, maybe share a bit more at the end. Just really tap into that feeling of the perimenopause. For a lot of women, sends us straight into that freeze mode, just because for lots of reasons that freeze mode of the nervous system is activated. That's our predominant state when we're going through perimenopause, for me at least. So I know that to be true for a lot of other people. And part of that reasoning is, it's stressful, and it's stressful for a long time, which can trigger us to move from fight or flight, which is where we're stressed. When we go from fight or flight into freeze, it's because there's been continued levels of stress. And our body's just like, you know what, I can't take it. But the other reason, I could just need a break. I just need a rest from this stuff for a bit. You know, it's that intense, that level of intensity. But the other side to that, the other thing that can really tip us into freeze mode, or that can be a symptom of freeze mode, is this sense of shame. So you will find your clients, and I've touched on this earlier, that they don't want to talk about the weird and wonderful symptoms. They don't really want to admit to anyone that they're going through it, because that would then admit that we're getting older. And when we're admitting to other people that we're getting older, we also have to admit that to ourselves. You see where I'm going with it? There's this sense of like, I want to hide the away, my symptoms. I want to hide myself because I've now got massive wrinkles on my forehead. I've now got this belly that's sticking out from nowhere. I don't look the way I used to look, and I certainly don't look like these Instagram models anymore. You know, it's about it takes us to this place of like, I'm just not worthy enough to be part of society. I'm not what people's goals are anymore. You know, when you're younger and when you're successful and when you look a certain way, or even if you don't look any particular way, but you're just young and you're healthy and you've got your whole life ahead of you, it's aspirational. This kind of in-between age for most people is not out there as an aspirational place to be. You know, it absolutely should be, because we know that we're learning to tap into this beautiful new phase of life and this beautiful level of enhanced spirituality and ability to connect with spirit and source and be this place of wisdom for our children and for people and colleagues around us, and just be this safe space. That isn't portrayed as aspirational. You know, for the vast, I mean, it's changing, but it's still got this aspect of, yeah, you can be perimenopausal, but you can look like J-Lo. You know, it's almost like it's not acceptance of where we are. It's like you've still got to try and be a bit better, even though you're going through this, which has this sense of shame attached to it. So we know that if I feel shame, I'm going to move into that freeze state. But also if I'm already in the freeze state because I just can't, I've been stressed for so long because my hormones are all out of whack and all the other stuff, and I can't remember shit, and I forgot my keys again, and I don't know what the kids are supposed to be taking to school tomorrow for home economics, all that kind of stuff, it can create extra layers of shame. So the nervous system state itself being in freeze because we want to hide away creates this feeling of shame. I don't fit in, I'm not good enough. But also the mistakes that we make and the weirdness that we experience physically and emotionally, and when we kick off a lot more and all that kind of stuff, creates this massive level of shame. So I really want the Transcendence classes to be this antidote to shame. And Brene Brown talks about shame in the most eloquent, easy to understand way. So we're going to play her video in a moment, and she's going to talk to us about what the antidote to shame is. We find the antidote to shame and we put it right slap bang in the center of the Transcendence session. So let's listen to Brene.
Shame is the gremlin who says, never good enough. And if you can talk it out of that one, who do you think you are? The thing to understand about shame is it's not guilt. Shame is a focus on self. Guilt is a focus on behavior. Shame is I am bad. Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is highly, highly correlated with addiction, depression, violence, aggression, bullying, suicide, eating disorders. And here's what you even need to know more. Guilt inversely correlated with those things. Shame for women is this web of unattainable, conflicting, competing expectations about who we're supposed to be. For men, shame is not a bunch of competing, conflicting expectations. Shame is one. Do not be perceived as what? Weak. But the truth is, vulnerability is not weakness. I define vulnerability as emotional risk, exposure, uncertainty. It fuels our daily lives. And I've come to the belief, this is my 12th year doing this research, that vulnerability is our most accurate measurement of courage. If we're going to find our way back to each other, we have to understand and know empathy, because empathy is the antidote to shame. If you put shame in a petri dish, it needs 3 things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. The 2 most powerful words when we're in struggle: me too. If we're going to find our way back to each other, vulnerability is going to be that path.
What a great video. You can watch the full video if you just talk into shame, Brene, if you type into YouTube shame by Brene Brown, it'll take you there. So she describes the antidote to shame, which we know is so damaging, to our nervous system, and therefore to our health and to how we think, how we feel. And we know that shame is really prevalent among women who are experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. So she describes the antidote to shame as empathy.
Shame.
So how do we cultivate empathy then? It sounds really easy. A lot of people confuse empathy with sympathy. A lot of people think they're being empathetic when really they're just giving a load of solutions. It's not what it's about at all. So what we want to do at the heart of our sessions, but particularly in this fourth session, is to cultivate this sense of empathy within ourselves so that we can be great facilitators and great healers, but also help encourage this sense of empathy within the group and each of your participants. So in order to cultivate empathy, Brene Brown says we need courage, compassion, and connection. We know that connection is being generated anyway through this shared experience, through being in that circle, this energetic circle. I mean, I like to actually physically sit my classes as a circle if I possibly can. I love that energy flow. We know that we're going to have enhanced connectivity because we're working with our electromagnetic fields. We're getting everybody's brain and body to work in coherence. We know that we're sending out the frequency from the heart and that that's going to connect with each and every body around us. So we know that we're creating that energetic connection. So we don't need to worry about that one as much, but we do need to cultivate this sense of courage, which Brene Brown calls the ability to be your genuine self and confidently share that identity with the world. So what I really want you to focus on in terms of your marketing is you being honest, this is my experience. If you have gone through this yet, obviously, I'm not saying that you can't teach it unless you are perimenopausal, but it's about you sharing your imperfection with the world, sharing who you really are and going first, being that example to everybody else. Because when you share, you give other people permission to do it. When you are courageous, you're showing someone else that it is possible for them also. You know, I always talk about the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile. It took people decades to run a 4-minute mile. Like, this was like the absolute, I probably might have even spoke about it in this training. Apologies if we already have, but it's this sense of knowing that it's possible. It took people decades to understand that it was possible. The only way they knew it was possible was when one man went and did it. As soon as one man had done it, everybody else suddenly was able to cross that finish line in a similar time or better. So that story just proves to us that, you know, once one person's done it, it gives us hope. It gives us that sense of, you know, it's possible for him or her, it's possible for me too. So that's the first thing, is that just you being your genuine self in the class, not pretending to be this guru, and in your marketing, again, not pretending to be a guru, just being who you are, sharing about what's important to you, maybe writing down some pillars of like what makes me me, and in the midst of your marketing, when you're talking about there's this class on at this time, and the next post might be these are the benefits of heart coherence, whatever it is, but sprinkled in within that, there's got to be you, moments of you. Someone who does that really well is Amanda, what's her name? Oh, I can't remember, but Amanda Francis, that's it. And she lives in LA, and her whole thing is just her life. Ask Harriet does that really well on Instagram as well. So it's just about you going, I've got this stuff to sell. These are the benefits. This is my teaching, but this is also who I am, what I stand for. Really important that you just share who you are, share your identity. Second layer to empathy is compassion. This one's potentially a little bit easier for us as Excel instructors. We're all really great at compassion. But compassion is really crucial to the battle with shame because it overcomes blame. So what we're doing when we're being compassionate with someone is we're allowing people to understand that it's not their fault. Okay, so this is about looking at yourself first, this always the first bit. Remember, you are the lighthouse, so we can't force people to change, but what we can do is be that really good example of, do you know what, I'm not perfect, but what I'm working on is this. I'm looking at myself, and I'm maybe looking at myself and the mistakes that I've made with compassion rather than anger, not having judgment for yourself. Okay, and understanding that whatever I do in my life, whatever behavior, whilst I am responsible for it in that I've took that action, it's looking at me, myself, with more compassion, less judgment, less criticism, saying what led up to those choices? What got me to that point where I did that thing? And taking, okay, yes, I have some element of responsibility. Yes, moving forwards, I can try not to do that again, but it wasn't my fault. It was the fact that X happened in my past, and then that triggered that emotion within me, and I didn't regulate my nervous system because I didn't have the capacity to do, and then I made that bad decision. It is not my fault. It's looking at, I really believe, again, like I said, there's no bad people in the world. We all come into the world the same way. We all come in with beautiful, pure light and pure intention, knowing fully who we are, what we're capable of, and knowing our needs, knowing what we want out of life, and being able to communicate with them and all that stuff. And it's just life beats it out of us. And some people's lives are harder than others. Some people have things happen to them which make life harder, and therefore it reduces our capacity to be able to regulate our nervous system. When we can't regulate our nervous system, what happens is that we are less able to make good decisions. But it's about, in the container of our classes, it's about people understanding that what they are going through is not because they are shit at regulating their emotions just because that's who they are. It's because they're going through this transition, right? It's because their hormones are like this. It's because their brain has changed to be like that. So the whole process of sharing the information is an act of compassion. But what we want to do is keep reinforcing that this is not something you have done to yourself. Therefore, you do not need to be ashamed of it. You cannot blame yourself for the way that you now smell weird, or you now put on 10 pounds, or you don't want to have sex with your husband at the moment, or whatever it is. Like, you can't blame yourself for it. Yes, I have responsibility moving forwards. Now I have that information. I can make a choice, but I still got to have capacity to be able to act on that choice. And sometimes, we're going to need extra support to be able to do that. It's not always our fault that we make the decisions that we make. So it's about communicating. When people are sharing what they're going through, they might say something like, oh, I know it's because I XYZ, and that makes it worse. It's about you going back in there and going, hang on, why did you not do XYZ, or why did you do XYZ? Is it because you didn't have capacity to in the first place, etc., etc.? Okay, so just holding, but even if you never did that with anyone else, just doing it with yourself is really important. So not blaming yourself. So compassion is this ability and willingness to be alongside somebody without any judgment, and to witness and be with that pain without shying away from it. Quite a lot of people minimize it. For example, my husband, he's not great at sitting with someone else's pain, so he will try and distract them, like we do with kids. We're like, okay, stop crying, and here's a candy bar. We've got to sit with it. Compassion is not, here's the candy bar. Compassion is sitting alongside it and with it, and witnessing it, maybe validating that. I can see why you would feel like that. I hear that you are depressed. I know that must be hard for you. I'm sorry you're having to go through XYZ symptom. Just seeing it, being with the pain rather than pushing it to one side with antidotes and distractions. Really, really important. So there's the no judgment element, but there's also the sitting with it. Don't push it away, be alongside it. Don't rush in with the response. Pause, let it settle. hear, validate, witness what that person's just said to you without saying, yeah, me too, or when I had it, this happened to me. That is part of the process, but it's not appropriate at this stage. Okay. This is about you showing them in whatever way feels good for you. I'm hearing that you're experiencing X. I'm sorry that you're experiencing X. That must be really hard, or that sounds really tough. That's all you need to say. Okay. And then moving around to that, trying to get them to see it's not your fault that you're experiencing that, no matter what it is. Okay. The last level of empathy is connection. So Brene Brown defines connection as this ability to share experiences and establish systems of mutual support with others. So she says that practicing connection requires and strengthens the elements of the other two. So in order to fully connect with somebody, we need to be courageous enough to be fully seen in our authentic self. And be like, because when we are not being ourselves, it acts as like this energetic barrier. So if you imagine yourself has these layers on top of your heart or on top of your energetic body that society places upon us. So society tells us to be better, to be skinnier, to be cleverer, to work harder, to only act like this, to only speak like this, to only get angry at this certain thing, to wear this certain thing. And all these layers cover up who we really are. When we start to pull them really back and take each one off, it requires courage, because we are coming up against judgment, because now we're not fitting into this mold where most people are sitting. Okay. But in order to connect, I need to be fully me. So I've got to be brave. But I've also, in order to be brave, I've got to have compassion for myself, because when I am blaming myself for all the mistakes that I've made in the way that I'm feeling and for not fitting in and all that kind of stuff, I'm not having compassion for myself. And therefore, I'm not able to be brave because I've put myself into shame mode. And I'm certainly not going to stand up and be brave when I'm in that freeze mode. Okay. When I'm in that nervous system state of freeze, I at least need to move back into fight or flight, where I've got a bit of like bolshiness about me. But really, I want to be in that ventral vagal state where I feel calm, connected, confident, and safe with who I am. So what I'm saying is, enable to practice connection, you've got to be brave first. You've got to, in order to get that bravery, you've got to have compassion for yourself to move you out of that blame state where you're going to hide yourself away from the world. Okay, so in order to share your true self with others and provide other people within this cohort support and understanding without any judgment, you've also got to request that they do the same thing for you too. Okay. So in order to have connection, you've got to show up as your true self. You've got to give yourself and others compassion and understanding without any judgment. And you've also got to kind of know and expect that they're going to do the same for you to have that true sense of connection. It's about creating that sense of safety. And I always talk about how, as exhale instructors, we don't put ourselves on a pedestal. We walk alongside our participants, we walk alongside our clients, and they share with us things that might not be new information to us, but there'll be something in the way somebody shares a particular experience or an insight or has this little bit of knowledge that suddenly hits different for us. So whilst you might be quote unquote ahead of them in terms of your learning and your experience, we still learn from our clients, because when they say it in a particular way with their energy and their life experience, or we see our healing unfolding in a certain way within that client, they are teaching us. Okay, so we're not in this position of I am teacher, you are student. We're on an equal playing field. We walk alongside them. So it is natural and normal to expect that they would also hold empathy for us. They will have that sense of connection from me to you, but you've got to be open and allow that to happen. What sometimes happens with teachers and students is, because we still have this somewhere within us, this sense of imposter syndrome and this sense of I don't want to be found out, or some level I'm not good enough to be teaching this stuff yet, then what happens is that we're somehow guarded. When we've guarded our hearts, we want to protect ourselves from this criticism, from judgment, from this being fear, we have this fear of being found out. if that exists on some level, sort of energetically, you're going to block that connection. So what you've got to work on doing is keeping that heart open through the tools that we practice, so the heart coherence and the opening of the body with all those movements before class, during class, after class, because sometimes we get this vulnerability hangover, Brene Brown calls it, when we almost experience this sense of shame because we're really predicting that we're going to get judged, we're going to get criticized, people are going to abandon us, people are going to find out that we're not like everyone else and all that kind of stuff. And we go into this cave where we start to instinctively protect our hearts. If you've got a closed heart, you cannot connect with someone. So I really want you to work on this sense of energetically keeping that channel for connection open. Okay, do it enough. Do it just before you're falling asleep. Okay, because that's when we are most likely to enter theta brainwaves. Okay, when we enter theta brainwaves, we have it's like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it as an opportunity for us to access the subconscious and rewrite these codes. So if your intention is to keep your heart open, doing it just before bed, whatever your intention is the best time to do it. Okay. So the last thing, the very last slide in the whole of this training is something that I wanted to add on. So we're going to channel empathy, the way that Brene Brown describes it, with that courage, compassion, and connection as the three principles of it. But we're also going to have and really hold all the way through, again, this sense of presence. How do we become truly present with other people? First of all, we become aware of what nervous system state we're in. So before we go into a class, especially before we go into this sharing session, if you like, this fourth class, really pay attention to what your nervous system's doing and take time to regulate it. Because if you're going into that class in that sense of fight or flight and in that nervous system state, and you may not be consciously aware that you're in it, but when people are talking, you might notice tension within your body. You might even notice anger. So for example, somebody might have completely ignored your advice or missed it or didn't, follow through on the thing that they said they were going to do. Or, you might notice a little bit of judgment creeping in. Just ask yourself, where am I on those systems? Bring yourself back to ventral vagal with some heart focused breath work. And making time really before the class begins to make sure you're starting in ventral vagal. But if you notice that anything triggers you, and that's a way that you might notice tension in the body, a sense of anger, irritation, frustration, judgment, whatever it is, just check yourself. You're not fully present with them because you're not really hearing what they're saying. As soon as we've gone into fight or flight mode, we're in defensive mode. So we're hearing what they're saying through this lens of defense. So it's not our authentic self. So our response is not authentic because what I'm sort of channeling it through these glasses, if you like. So I'm seeing them through this lens of fight or flight glasses, which is probably going to be hyper focused on any kind of negativity because you want to protect yourself. So you as teacher is going to be wanting to protect your reputation as a teacher. You don't want judgment, you don't want criticism. So you're going to be hyper vigilant for anything that might trigger or make your brain think, actually, this person is criticizing what I'm teaching and what I'm saying. And whilst you're in that mode, because you're hyper fixating on your very tunnel visioned, and you might actually find as well when you're in fight or flight that you have a preconceived notion about this person, what they're going to say, what their outcome is going to be. And obviously that's really unfair, and you're projecting that onto the other person as well. So energetically, you're not holding that vision for that person anymore of them feeling healed, empowered, confident, their self-esteem through the roof, all that kind of stuff, which is how we want them to leave the transcendence. You've got this automatic, well, that person's probably not going to do what I said, and she's probably not going to end up doing anything. And it's not necessarily because you're a bad person. Remember, there's no blame here. It's because something that she said or something that's happened before class has put you into this fight or flight mode where suddenly we are tunnel vision, we're very fixed outcome, and on our sort of divine, it's not divine actually, because it's very human, our like primal intention is to survive. The only way I'm going to survive this is by either dissociating, so I'm ignoring whatever she's saying in case it's critical to me, so I'm not really listening, or being very defensive in the way that we come back to them. Okay, most of us are probably going to just dissociate, which means we've not heard anything. And also most of us are probably, rather than having an angry exchange back, say, why didn't you do the work? You're probably just going to have this preconceived idea of what's going to happen for that person or what they're actually going to say. So you're going to miss what they're actually telling you. So bring it back. It's normal if this happens to you. Doesn't make you a bad teacher. Okay, just means you're normal. Just means that your capacity for being in ventral vagal is reduced. Maybe you didn't sleep enough the night before. Maybe you've not been eating right. Maybe you've had an argument with your partner, whatever it is. But you can bring yourself back. The awareness is the key. Same, if you're in freeze mode, you might notice a sense of shame come over you when that person's saying, do you know what, I tried this, it didn't work. And you've internalized that as your fault. Or you might feel like sense of shame when they're talking about something that's really uncomfortable. It might trigger you in that way. You might feel a sense of emptiness, or you might feel a sense of zoned outness. You might just totally, like halfway through their sentence, you might zone out. And you might also want to withdraw. So you might feel really tired, really sleepy, and also like you don't really want to give people your energy. So it's really important that we come to class feeling good anyway to begin with. But again, you can bring yourself out of freeze mode with some movement, with some like literally just grounding yourself, holding onto your body, rocking, swaying, tapping, all these things you can do whilst you're listening to someone else. So I don't want you to stop the energy exchange and stop the share circle to go and run around the room. But what you can do is maybe tap your feet, 1, 2, 1, 2 while you're listening, or give yourself a hug while you're listening. All of that stuff can kind of be subtle. I know it doesn't sound like it would be but if you sat there cross-legged in a circle, you can wrap your arms around yourself and just tell yourself, I'm safe, it's okay. And just noticing, again, this is normal human responses. You are not wrong for zoning out halfway through. It is normal. Just bring yourself back to that ventral vagal state the best way that you can. And the final way that we can give our presence to people is literally just listening. Don't try and fix the problem. Just give them space to be heard and seen, and then empower them to find a solution which works for themselves. You can even say to them, what do you think might make this better? Simple, done. So that is the end of the Transcendence training. Thank you so much for trusting your intuition, trusting your path and your purpose, and trusting me, and going out there and sharing this stuff with the world. It has been my pleasure to host this training, and I cannot wait to see the outcomes and the impact that this course is going to have on the world.